Hi and welcome back to Cheeky Crypto. My name is Nick and today guys we're going to be jumping down into the world of Bitcoin, taking a look at the recent price action, what's been going on this Easter weekend and giving our thoughts and opinions on where I think things are going. As I get into this video, if you find it useful and informative, smash that like button. I really do appreciate that. If you happen to be new to the channel, then why not go ahead and subscribe, tap the bell, select all the notifications, and in doing so, you will be kept up to date with everything that we do here at Cheeky Crypto. If you haven't yet joined us in Discord, guys, check it out, linked in the description down below. It's a fantastic community talking crypto 24/7. It's completely free, and I don't think you'll be disappointed by what you find down there. So go ahead and check it out. Let's jump right down into this one, right? So obviously here we have all of our thumbnails of the videos that we produce. You can see that we're kind of looking for a bit of a move to the upside, but actually we kind of moved down from yesterday. Okay, so we're going to review things where they sit today. Obviously this is going to be where the video will go live about an hour or so from the point of recording. So we'll put the thumbnail on there and we'll keep ourselves accountable for everything that is going on. So let's go ahead and jump down into the charts. We'll take a look at smart money concepts in a moment, but before we do that, we're going to take a look at 𝗕𝗓𝗪𝗓 theory. And here we can see 𝗕𝗓𝗪𝗓 theory kind of still wants to push up a little bit higher, but we are in a bit of a ranging market. This is pretty typical of a weekend. Now we were looking at this as an impulsive structure that broke down, so we can kind of pin that one off now. We don't need that on there. I still think we'll have to have the 5-wave drop at some point, so we'll keep a close eye on that. Now, it's still possible that we rally up a little bit higher here into this yellow box range. That still is ongoing. Basically, what's going on this weekend is we're finding ourselves just coiling down here. You can see that these are lower highs ever so slightly, and then we can see that we have higher highs up here as well. And you can see how recently we just broke out of this to the downside. Now, typically in a B wave movement, well, I say in a B wave movement, but if this is a big A wave coming down and this is a B wave sideways trade and the C wave is down here, it wouldn't be terribly too unusual to see some of this kind of like elongated sideways trading over weekends and in a B wave structure. B waves are incredibly unpredictable because they can be so many different things, so it's quite hard to get a good read on them. My expectation is unless we go down lower than 27,711, we should be looking for that break upwards. Okay, now let's go ahead and just take a look at some of these micro movements and see where we sit right now. Okay, so we know that we were no longer doing 5 waves up here, we're just 3 waves. Okay, so we can see that. I'm just going to go delete that one for a second. And then you can see down here, we've come down in 3 waves, so that's okay. Then we actually had this break up here, which is quite interesting. Again, this looks like a 5-wave structure, or at least a micro 5-wave, but it cannot be that based on the fact that it hasn't reached the 1.618. So what we'll do is we'll just mark that out as a slightly longer C-wave structure there. And then of course on the way down here, we are in a very similar situation as to what we found ourselves in yesterday, where we have the ability to come down a little bit deeper. Let's go into the 5-minute chart. What we want to do is we want to reflect on what was going on just inside here, right? Do we have a structure that is actually acceptable to be, impulsive to the downside, or a leading diagonal, or contracting, expanding diagonal, that kind of thing right in here, right? So what we want to do is we need to use the fib tool to figure out, what's going on here. So we have this move here. That would have to be our wave 1. This would have to be our wave 3. And this would have to be our wave 4. Now the wave 4 crosses over with the wave 1. That's okay in a diagonal, but we'd want to check to see whether or not we reached in any of these levels. We did. Okay, so it's possible that this is diagonal, and the diagonal would look like this. It would basically come down here into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4 being up there, in fact, and 5 being down here. Okay, so we'd look at it like this, and it would look at it as a 3-wave into wave 1, 3 waves in wave 3, 3 waves in wave 4, and 3 waves in wave 5. Okay, and then of course we could look at this as either leading, or we can look at it as expanding. Depending on how you want to look at it. Okay, you can kind of see it in there. Ultimately, if it was expanding, wave 1 is the shortest and wave 5 is the longest, and wave 3 is right in the middle there. So all that works quite well for a diagonal move. Now, why is a diagonal move important? A diagonal move is important here as to understanding, whether it's come back to our hourly, as to whether or not we have the ability to look at this as a 5-wave structural point to the downside. And it does look pretty good for that. Okay, so at the moment we have this kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, potentially 5 coming down a little bit more. Okay, and so if we're doing this 5-wave structure here, what does that mean? And it means that we are 335 regular down. It's just a regular flat correction from here. So we can then start to think of it like this. Okay, just coming down out of this kind of trend line. Trend lines are weak anyway, so I'm not a big fan of those. But you can kind of see how this moves down into this little range here. And then I think from here we can move on up. We might end up with a double bottom, I don't know, but we'll see how that kind of tracks. Ultimately, what we're looking for is that giant move to take us up into this upper higher area here. So the more that we come down here, the oversold it will become, and the better the chances are of that bigger push to the upside. And being a Sunday, typically on a Sunday, the bulls do try to push that price for a weekly close a little bit higher. But you know, we'll see. It's Easter weekend. It could be slow. It could be different. We'll kind of analyze it as it goes along. But at the moment, the sentiment of the herd, or the majority of the people, are forcing this into a 5-wave drop here to finish off a C-wave structure. So under this, the psychology of the Elliott wave theory anyway, moving this up here, we can see that we probably, if I actually come down into a 5-minute chart here for a second, because I want to check to see whether or not we actually have finished that move or not. So we're talking about 8 o'clock this morning. So we were pretty low at 8 o'clock this morning. So it's possible that actually it's already finished. It will be interesting to kind of see how that goes, because we're coming back down into our, let me check the 15-minute. Yeah, I'd say it's possible that we actually have already finished this, just coming down here a little bit. But we'll keep an eye on that and see how that kind of plays out. Just come back into that 5 minutes. So we hit the low. Yeah, we could still probably, we could look at it through both lenses, as in it's complete or it's not complete. So over the next hour or so, that should be a little bit clearer. We've kind of got to come down a little ways, if not yet already complete, where we'll be targeting out 27,840 through to around 27,811 approximately, just a fraction lower. Then of course, you know, we are still targeting out that higher range, right? That hasn't changed. So we are still talking about 28,237 to 28,647. And then once that's kind of in there, we should then be thinking about completing this bigger move, which would be a big ABC structure, in my opinion, at least at the moment, taking us down into our lower ranges. Okay, so ultimately everything here is coming along quite nicely, even though it's a really boring, slow trading weekend. Ultimately, we can trade it if we really wanted to. I'll probably be waiting for better opportunities myself. But yeah, essentially, I think there's going to be plenty of opportunities for trading if we really wanted to during these kind of more predictable kind of sideways trading movements. Essentially, you have an anchored in low point and an anchored in high point. But until you get that break and you get that volatility, it's going to be really just scalping small trades as and when you see them. So let's go over into smart money concepts, right? What's smart money concepts telling us now? And we are below the equilibrium, okay, and we're in the internal order box. You can see here just how... get these in here. We've got a weak high, strong low, just how consolidated this range is on Bitcoin, right? You can see that we are in this sideways trade and it's really tight. So we have that that weak high, which basically is telling us that we can have that break up higher, and we have a strong low, unlikely to break on down here a little bit lower. And we go ahead and just actually snap that in, right? So 27,711 on the low side and 28,181 on the high side. The equilibrium sits obviously halfway between the two, and here we can see that we're below the 50 and 200 EMAs and below equilibrium, right? So essentially we're in the internal order box for buying. You can kind of see those here. We can see this double bottom scenario just up on this side, but ultimately here I don't think there's terribly too much to kind of note on the kind of smaller time frame for Bitcoin here. Now on a smart money concepts point of view, now as we start zooming out, we can see that we still have this bullish characteristic change on that higher time frame, and we are consolidating down quite a bit. So if I just zoomed out of this, and we can kind of see that what we're really doing here is coiling ourselves up into a bigger move, and I do think this is going to be a break upwards. How high, I don't yet know really, but if we take a look at it and we can think, okay, well, we're pretty positive on some of these time frames, specifically like the daily, then we could be looking at a break to something to this effect. Okay, so we kind of want to be thinking that from a smart money concepts point of view, that actually we are still in a bullish structure. We are still targeting out that $30,000 level. We can kind of see it right inside here. Okay, and essentially all we're really doing is just coiling things up, getting a big reset on the momentum indicators and things like that. On the kind of micro levels, there are some interesting areas, but we still remain in that bullish structure. So I'm not too concerned right now. And like I said, with the Elliott wave theory stuff, we can kind of see that there's a little bit of a requirement to go down a bit further before we rally on up. But looking at smart money concepts here, you can kind of see that things are ramping up quite nicely. We're coiling up and we have a bit of a push to the upside. I still see $30,000 as a target before we really do get heavily rejected. So ultimately, yeah, that's kind of where I put Bitcoin at the moment. I do think there's still this need to see Bitcoin push up a little bit higher. With all that being said, though, we should definitely remember that we are in a bearish state of play on a bigger macro level. Okay, so we can see here that we're up in what I think might be a supply zone, although the consolidation of this area is telling me it's unlikely that it's going to hold as a supply zone. It's kind of just being pinned in there at the moment. But we are doing some higher highs and some higher lows, and these generally and typically do actually end up breaking down. If we come over into our daily, you can see it right in here on our Elliott Wave theory side of things, right? And we can see that every single bear market movement that we've had, say every single, there were a couple of exceptions, but nonetheless, you can kind of see higher highs, higher lows breaking down, okay? And where we are right now is a big higher high and higher low situation, waiting for that break to the downside. But I still think that this is push up higher, hitting into that $30,000 before we actually get rejected. What we really ought to be seeing are some lower lows and some lower highs, as these have a tendency to break upwards, right? So where we are right now is still incredibly bearish, even though we don't really want to admit that. Ultimately, we're not ready for a bullish market. And I'll try to talk a little bit around the wallet counts later today as well, this afternoon, so you can understand, where all the money is coming from to generate this kind of movement, this FOMO, and this push to the upside. Because at the moment, it's not really being driven from large funds, it's just being driven from retail. But we'll talk more about that this afternoon. Ultimately here, I do feel that there's still this push up higher, but I don't think it's going to last terribly much further beyond $30,000. Maybe if we're lucky, we can push to the 34 level, but for ultimately, I'm still looking at sub $20,000. And personally, I do think a new lower low is required. But let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. Really interested to get everyone's thoughts and opinions on what they think Bitcoin is up to at the moment. And if you haven't yet joined us in Discord, check it out, linked in the description below. Until the next one though, guys, have a fantastic day.
We are not financial advisors, and none of what we have communicated verbally or in writing here should be considered as financial advice. It is not. Do your own research before investing in any digital asset or affiliate offers, and understand that investing in any crypto is risky. If you do, you need to be prepared to lose your entire investment. This video is for information and entertainment purposes only. All our videos are strictly personal opinions. Please make sure you do your own research and never take our opinions for financial guidance. There are multiple strategies, and not all strategies fit all people. Our videos are not financial advice.